Okay. Hello, everyone. I call the meeting to order. I hope you're all healthy and doing well. Thank you for joining us today for the session on mental wellness in the new normal. We are grateful to be able to facilitate a session to enhance our resilience, especially as we are all facing the COVID-19 crisis right now. I now request District Governor Harjeet to address the Rotary family. Harjeet, over to you. Where is Harjeet?
1 minute. I'll
Yeah,
unmute him.
Yeah.
Harjeet, I'm unmuting you.
Okay.
Hello. Harjeet, can you hear me? Harjeet, can you unmute yourself? I'm trying to unmute you.
Mala?
Yes.
You need to call Mrs. Bilda. She's trying to log in.
Mrs. Bidla is already logged in.
No, she said she logged out again because just call her. She's been trying and trying.
All right. Kandar?
1 minute. Sunil, I think the host rights are with you.
No, I've given them.
It's with me. But then I cannot see anyone here waiting in the room.
There's nobody waiting.
She logged off, I think. So Mala, will you just tell her to log back in?
I'll just call, because her name is showing, I'm just wondering what, one sec. I can see her name.
Yeah, I managed to log on.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Iraq.
Yeah.
Hi,
So,
Mrs.
Kandar?
Bilda.
Hi.
Yeah.
There's DG Harjeet.
Where's Harjeet?
I can see his name, but I don't see his face.
I'll call him.
Yeah, I'll just call him. You did have a signal problem in the morning.
So I'm sorry, I had a network issue. It's been playing truant since morning. We've been on a meeting, finance committee, since 9 o'clock, Sunil and me. We're a bit tired.
Yes.
DG
Mrs. Nirja Birla, Mala Mehta, District Governor-elect Sunil, and my friends in Rotary. It's a pleasure to be amidst all of you this morning to address this very important topic of mental wellness. You know, most of us are in a position where we can take the financial beating for a few months as long as this pandemic lasts. But there are issues which are beyond expression and beyond control, and those are more on the lines of mental well-being. So I am here to learn with all of you from the experts as to how we tackle these trying and challenging times to come out as winners and ensure that this does not affect our health or our well-being. So my best wishes to all of you. My compliments to Mala for organizing this meeting. My compliments to Sunil and his team for thinking of this very special project or this very special avenue, which is most often neglected by many of us. So all the best, and I'll be with you through the meeting. Over to Mala.
District Governor-elect Sunil Mehra, I request you now to address the Rotary family.
Thank you, Mala, and good morning and welcome to DG Harjeet, Mrs. Birla, Dr. Zirak, College of Governors. Apologies, I cannot see you all here because of the numbers that are here already. Mala, of course, you for organizing, and team Hanging Garden. Congratulations on your charter night and your first ever, I believe, District Avenue lead. And my fellow Rotarians of smart and visionary years. We all know the large support towards Rotary has constantly received through the Rotary Birla family and through past director Ashok Mahajanji. And we acknowledge and thank the family for the same. When this project was ensued, it was targeted more for schools and colleges. However, COVID happened and dynamics changed. But I congratulate Team Empower, Mala Mehta, and Team Inner Space and Hanging Garden for now aligning this much needed shift in the current scenario, also for Rotarians. So with much ado, we will get into the main part of this meeting, and over to you, Mala.
Yeah, thank you, Sunil. So on a special note, I want to congratulate my home club, Rotary Bombay Hanging Garden, for being the lead club, and a very special mention of the very enthusiastic zonal team of Vision 2020. Before we proceed, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about this presentation. First, today's webinar will be available on YouTube after the live session. Currently, we are streaming on Facebook as well. We have also built in some time for a Q&A at the end. So in your meeting window, there is a chat bubble. Every time you have a question, feel free to drop in a question in there, and we'll try to go through all of them at the end. For a better experience of this webinar, I request all of you to ensure that you are muted, and also click on the speaker from your gallery view so that you all can see her and Dr. Marker when they are addressing us. Let me now first turn to our esteemed presenter, Mrs. Neerja Birla, who is the founder and the chairperson of Empower, an initiative of the Aditya Birla Education Trust and a movement that aims to promote positive mental health. Please mute. Mrs. Birla is the epitome of grace and spontaneity. Without any demo, she agreed to the district's request for a webinar on mental health during these unusual, challenging times. Sunil has, of course, thanked you, but a special thanks from Rotary Club of Bombay Hanging Garden as well. Mrs. Birla, as you're well aware, the Indian business landscape has already been facing challenges even before COVID-19 happened. Now, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we fear not only for our health, we are also scared about the future. How do we cope with these uncertainties? How do we cope with the fear of the unknown, Mrs. Birla?
Good morning, dear Rotarians. It's a real pleasure to be here virtually with all of you. Rotary, as I always say, always has a very special place in my heart. I have grown up amongst Rotarians and amidst the Rotary families. So it's always a very deep connect, and it always feels very special to attend a Rotary. Thank you so much, Sunil, for getting this underway. The project we've been talking about for months now. It's something that we at Empower are very, very excited about, really looking forward to it. For me personally, it means a lot because I have always wanted to work with the Rotary at this scale. And, being able to do it now is a dream come true for me. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much, Mala, for organizing and coordinating these efforts. We all know it takes a lot to get anything going. It's one thing to to have an idea, and it's another thing to be able to implement it and execute it. And I wholeheartedly thank you for that, because without your coordination and intervention, this would have really not taken off at all. So thank you very much from me personally and from Empower. Coming to your question about the uncertainty, I think we all, and when I say we all, I mean everybody at different levels, is going through uncertainty. I think that is something that we all have to accept and acknowledge. And I think the first thing that we should all do is accept that, instead of trying and building a really rosy picture in our minds and pretending that it doesn't exist, or pretending that it's going to go away by brushing it under the carpet. let's not do that, because that is not going to happen. So let's accept that, yes, there are uncertainties in our life at this point in time. This has been a very disruptive phase of our lives, and fear of the unknown is bound to be there for a lot of us. And I do understand, because I've also been hearing from my friends and other people that, sometimes, I mean, either businesses may shut down, or obviously they're going to take a hit, whether you're in the professional space, or whether you have an organization, and especially if you're an entrepreneur looking at just setting out. So these things are bound to be. The only way we can handle it is, let's take baby steps. Let's take one day at a time. Try and do whatever best that we can do to salvage the situation, but also know that it is going to take some time before things do come back to normalcy. So I think expect that it will probably be a cycle of about 1 or 2 years before things start getting back into some sort of normalcy, and some where we can start expecting things to come back to the way they were. In the meantime, I think the philosophical way obviously would be to look at it is trying and understand that there are many other people, far more than you and me, who are in worse off situations. So we at least have a lot to fall back on. So let's make the most of that and try and understand what are the positivities that we can get out of it, and then grow from that situation.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Birla. So patience and fortitude, we always talk about them. I think now is the time when we need to inculcate these traits. So this allows me to turn to Dr. Zirak Makar. Zirak is a renowned child and adolescent psychiatrist with clinical training in psychotherapy and over 15 years of clinical experience. He's a senior psychiatrist and advisor at Empower and the medical director at TABIS, the Aditya Birla Integrated School. Zirak, if people have never encountered symptoms of depression or anxiety before, let us say they've never been clinically diagnosed, in such a situation, how would they know that it is not just natural anxiety and that it is time to seek professional help? Is any short-term medical treatment that can be recommended as an option to help people who are struggling through this phase?
Sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mala, for having me here. Thank you, Mrs. Birla, for always giving these platforms and opportunities to spread awareness. To answer your question, Mala, I think what we need to first understand is all of us, I think in every way or in different ways, is going through some kind of stress. Now, we have to also understand that when we are subjected to this kind of stress that is worldwide, it is a pandemic. I mean, statistics for mental health have really gone up in all various forms. We have to be clear whether we are dealing with something clinical or something with regards to then stress. What we need to understand is that when we undergo or are subjected to stress, there is something called as a stress hormone within our bodies, within our bloodstream and brain that go up. And when these cortisol levels go up, they naturally lead to symptoms of difficulties in the way we think. It is clearly known to indicate and affect cognition. It affects visual perception and the way our memory functions. So with stress, sometimes people talk about having even short-term or long-term stress. There are problems with attention, concentration, and focus, difficulty with decision-making. And also what we've realized is that when the stress levels go up and the cortisol levels go up, it also leads to increase in weight gain, decreased sleep, fatigue. But most importantly, it decreases immunity. And that's a scary thing, right? Because at this point, in fact, we want the reverse happening. We want to be strong. We want to work on our physical health. We want our immunity to go up. So these are all aspects or symptoms, like I call, with regards to stress. However, this can then percolate into clinical anxiety or then clinical depression. So if there are persistent symptoms of low or irritable moods, if there's a lack and loss of interest in almost everything, with very dark thoughts or a sense of helplessness, hopelessness, worthlessness, There are so many young adults calling in and expressing suicidal ideations and thoughts, like they feel that there's no future ahead, and constant negative rumination of obsessive thoughts regarding the pandemic or regarding their health and regarding the future. Then this all surmounts to what we call as signs and symptoms of clinical depression that don't seem to really go away. And these are then manifestations of a neurochemical imbalance in the brain, primarily serotonin. Serotonin is the neurochemical in the brain when and if balanced, creates that balance for mood, for anxiety. But if there is this chronic stress and if there are these imbalances, it causes these symptoms. And lastly, with anxiety, if there's constant sense or symptoms of feeling like panic, feeling there's an impending doom, or constant symptoms of restlessness, feeling on the edge, palpitations, breathlessness, difficulty breathing, clear changes in appetite and sleeping patterns, lethargy and fatigue, and unable to concentrate and focus, then these are again symptoms of anxiety. And when they become very extreme, they can manifest in the form of a full-blown, what we call clinically as a panic attack. Yes, there are treatments for this. What I look as first, before jumping into just clinical treatment with pharmacotherapy or medications, you do get short-term SOS anti-anxiety medication. You do get short-term antidepressants as well that really work effectively and fast. But I would like to treat it in a holistic way first. So for example, and I know many people are going through sleep disturbances, I would then use melatonin, which is a natural occurring sleep hormone, as a supplement during times like this. Magnesium as a supplement is known to work wonders in bringing down anxiety levels, bringing about relaxation, and even taking away some bits of anxiety. I believe that mental health and gut health are connected. So using a lot of probiotics, either in the form of capsules or just your simple yogurt or dahi made at home, that serves as a great way to improve immunity and gut health. And of course, like I said, ensure that sleep and strength and physical activity is ongoing. And of course, sometimes to boost immunity, you can remember to eat healthy, eat well, and use multivitamins as a supplement. But lastly, when you do feel that you are going through something which is not coming down naturally and it's getting worse, or it's making you unable to function on a day-to-day basis, please reach out. Either reach out to a professional psychiatrist or a psychologist or both, because counseling, talking about it in an environment that's non-judgmental and non-biased can really, really help.
Zirak, a question about anti-anxiety medication and antidepressants. If you take them for the short term, would they be addictive? Or can you wean them? Okay.
That's a complete myth. In fact, there are so many myths around psychiatry and psychiatric medications that once you start, you get dependent on it, or once you start, you can't get off them. Those are purely myths. Yes, you can't misuse sleeping medication, or the groups of benzodiazepine groups of drugs can cause dependency, withdrawal symptoms. But if you use them wisely and you use the short-term anti-anxiety medications or the long-term antidepressants, they do not cause dependency. But like I said, like today when we get a toothache or we have fever and we need to take paracetamol, we don't even think twice. And in fact, those kind of medications have far more side effects than these. These were manufactured for sometimes even long-term use, and they have very, very low side effect profiles, and they can be taken. And why not take them if you clinically need them?
Thank you,
Mala, I'd like to just interject here and just take you from what Zirak was saying. This is such a myth with people who don't understand medicines or pharmacology, and lay people like us, because you're just conditioned to believe that medicines which are used for mental health are very addictive. And once you get on it, you just cannot get off it. And that's a question that very often as a layperson, even I am asked. But I think, to put it conversely, one can get addicted to something like a paracetamol also, or one can get addicted to something like Otrivin nose drops. In fact, it is very addictive, because the minute you start using something like Otrivin, you come to a state where you just cannot do without it, and you really have to go through a weaning process in order to get off it. Even drugs like these are addictive. And on the other side, if you really need a medicine for a mental health concern, one really must take it and not think whether it's addictive or not. It is not addictive, but what I'm trying to say is that even regular medicines can become addictive. So one should not be afraid of taking medication if it is needed.
Absolutely, Mrs. Birla. And also to just end off that piece, I also feel it's a combination of both. You know, many people feel it's only counseling or psychotherapy or then only medication. I truly believe when you have a holistic approach towards mental health and you utilize both these services, it has some amazing outcomes out there with regards to mental health concerns.
Thank you, Zira. Coming back to you, Mrs. Birla, as a mother and a working professional, are there any suggestions or strategies that you would like to share with so many other families here who are going through this lockdown?
So I think, as moms and working moms and women, I think we're always trying to get to that utopian work-life balance, trying to balance our professional lives, personal lives, trying to balance our duties at home as caretakers, as wives, as mothers, daughters-in-laws. And then, of course, we have our professional life also that we, want to be superb at. So we're always under this immense pressure of always being the superwoman and always trying to get the right, perfect balance. And that always existed even pre-COVID. So I'd like to say two things. One is that I do believe that, there's nothing called a perfect balance, because there's always going to be that little bit of give and take. I think on the whole, we're able to balance it out. One day could be a little bit more of this and one day could be a little bit more of that. But on the whole, we're balancing it out. And I think we should really be proud of ourselves for that. Secondly, I think obviously being right now in this situation, the lines between our professional life and personal life have become blurred. But the advantage is that we have the flexibility of now being able to complete our chores and tasks pretty much at our time when we have that little bit of window to look at it. And having that flexibility also allows us time to then to restructure our work according to what our home responsibilities are. But at the same time, I think it's important to give it some sort of a structure to your day so that you know that these are the number of hours from this time to this time is what you're going to be working. Beyond that is going to be dedicated to home. Within that, have a little bit of flexibility. So give it a structure, but within that have flexibility. I think that's what seems to be working with me. Because of course you have to keep going back and seeing what your kids are doing, particularly if you have younger children or if you've got parents at home who need your attention. So, allow yourself that amount of flexibility, work around that, but give it a structure, because if you don't, then, you're going to feel yourself just going all over the place. Try and do one thing at a time. So instead of trying to, complete a task at home and work and look after your kids, so you have to be kind of going from one task to the other, but complete one task, then go to the next one. In that sense, that would also help. Keep aside some time for me time, because I think that's really important. You have to keep some time for yourself, doing whatever you think will make you feel relaxed. It could be listening to music, reading, watching a show, catching up with friends, just something that you want to do for yourself, what you really look forward to. If you're working, I would say that keep a workspace allotted, so that psychologically that that's where you have to work, and you kind of switch off from your home and switch into work. But of course, switching off is tiring, so give yourself that amount of leeway. Don't be too harsh on yourself, and know that we all are in this together, and we all are really working hard to balance our lives, and I think we're doing pretty well at it. So let's be happy with that.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Birla. Dr. Marker, in the current situation, it appears that teenagers and young adults are experiencing more mental health concerns. And also, additionally, I wanted to refer to the boys' locker room controversy in Delhi. Is it a product of the challenges of living under lockdown, or is it independent? What are your views on that?
Okay. So you're right, Mala. I think the population that's most seemingly affected are the adolescents, teenagers, and young adults in all of this? I think a couple of reasons come up here. I think one is, at least all the parents who've been calling in and, asking for guidance and support is because they feel that their teenagers' sleep-wake cycles and their circadian rhythm has completely gone for a toss. I mean, every second or third teenager I know of or parent I'm speaking to, they are actually sleeping at 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning, and they're waking up the next day post-afternoon. Now, when you have that in itself, where the entire circadian rhythm has gone, topsy-turvy, you are going to have then obviously, more moodiness and irritable the next day. You're going to be dysfunctional and lethargic. You're going to then obviously feel other psychosomatic symptoms have come up. So, teenagers are talking about feeling low, irritable, headaches, a lot of fatigue is setting in. And also because of this, they obviously then can't partake in their home chores and help their parents. So a lot of parents are then clashing with teenagers with regards to that. Then there's the whole balance of online classes through school courses or college work. And also, I think a lot of these teenagers are stuck in between, right? So many of them say have got admissions abroad and they don't know what the future holds. So there are scores of students across our country where the board exams, those dates have not been declared. So they don't know whether to study, give a break, get back to it or not, whether exams will happen or not, whether promotions will happen or not. So all this obviously, like I said, leads to underlying stress and anxiety, and feelings of demotivation have really, really seeped in, and boredom. Because, I mean, most teenagers are so used to meeting and socially engaging themselves, going out, or, interacting with others, that this has become a huge source of frustration and boredom. With the result is, again, every parent is saying that they're using so much more of online stuff. They're going on the internet far more. They're using social media far more. And obviously, teenagers being teenagers the way they are, we do know that their frontal lobes are not developed yet. They are in a very impressionable age, and they are so prone to conformity and peer pressure. So then all these wrongdoings obviously increase. There is a lot of sexual experimentation online. I know many parents are lamenting that pornography viewing has gone up with teenagers a lot. There's a lot of gaming addiction on PUBG and other such games where tons and tons of kids are spending hours playing online games with even kids across the world. And this, along with, there are scores of teenagers facing increase in, anyways, they have hormonal imbalances, their acne and skin changes have gone up. Their hygiene. I mean, I have parents who are saying that they're not bathing in 2-3 days at a stretch. So all this obviously is leading to not just health issues, weight gain issues, diets have gone for a toss because they're having their first meal perhaps in the evening when they wake up. So all this put together, it is then a cause of concern from a mental health perspective for sure. And it's leaving a lot of parents distressed because, anyways, it's sometimes difficult to deal with this age group. And then the conflicts have definitely gone up with these stress factors and these situations at home.
Okay, so I think we have to.
I think here I'd like to say that, of course, what Zirak is pointing out is the situation. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And particularly with, the timings going haywire and that there are a lot of uncertainty coming for the children that what the future is going to be. But I think we as parents need to give them that surety that everybody is in the same situation world over. So it's not something which is peculiar only to us, right? That's one. Two, as far as universities are concerned, all universities are obviously going to understand that. And some have said that, okay, you rejoin from December. Some have said, okay, maybe September. Some have said we're going to get back to you. As far as exams are concerned, of course, the date is keeping on is getting pushed forward. But like, for example, the Mumbai University has announced that for all colleges, they're going to get exemption this year and they're going to go in for next year. So everybody is trying their level best to mitigate the effects of this because everybody is in it together and everybody understands it's a very disruptive phase. So I think let's try and sort of focus on the things that, yes, people are trying to make it better. People generally everywhere, people are trying to get in measures to see how we can, mitigate the negative effect of it. And let's take solace in that. Let's take solace in the fact that this is going to end. And till it doesn't end, there are ways and means of going forward as far as children are concerned. I think as parents, what we need to ensure is that yes, they are in some sort of routine, so that this whole it doesn't get so badly skewed. At the same time, understand that yes, screen time is going to go up, but let's kind of yet try and maintain a balance in that. Let's give them more healthy food to eat. So of course, the onus does come a lot on parents to try and structure them in a manner which then becomes more conducive for them. Let's understand that they too are going through their own difficulties. So let's not be too strict on them also. At the same time, let's not completely let them go haywire. So as parents and caregivers, we really need to get a little bit of structure within and yet give them flexibility, understand the situation, but also know that this uncertainty will come to an end. Until then, everybody is really trying their best to make it work to the best possible.
Thank you. Mrs. Birla, I have another question for you. The United Nations is calling for measures to address a horrifying global surge in domestic violence in Western countries and in our country as well. And this is directed in particular at women and young children. Now, since Empower has launched a 24-hour helpline to address mental health concerns, have you seen any rise in callers citing domestic violence?
So initially we did not, but yes, of late in the last couple of weeks, we have seen an increase of cases reporting domestic violence. So whether it is at the helpline, whether it is at our foundation with clients, or it is at the center, everywhere we are seeing an increase of cases of domestic violence. This could be cases that were already existing but have escalated. The situation has become worse because of the lockdown issues. And we're also seeing new cases come up. So it's a combination of both. But yes, domestic violence is definitely on the rise. There are a lot of NGOs who are actually trying to help out, reach out to people who are victims of domestic violence. That is a situation that is really something, which is very sad. It is the truth, and people going through it, my heartfelt sympathy with them, because you're really in a tough situation. Your victim and your perpetrators are in the same place. It's very tough to cope with something like that. But yes, we are seeing that, and that's on the rise. We are trying to, from our side, with the clinicians and the therapists are obviously giving them ways and means of how to cope with it. The people who are actually indulging in it, the perpetrators, obviously need a lot of help themselves. And I really do wish that they would come forth and take the help, because it would really help their family lives.
Yeah. So
I'd like to also add here, Mala, apart from the abuse, I think also relationships are getting affected, because on this situation that is so unusual, being in the same house, morning till night, whether it's between even spouses. So it's also abuse. Yes, that's definitely increased between abusers and victims, and even kids are being abused. But even relationships, between, say, in-laws, mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, or between already existing strife or stress in a family or in a joint family settled aspects, these all, aspects of relationships being confined in one space have gone up. So we're telling everyone right now, just be patient with each one, give each one space and privacy as much as possible, and accept, right? At a time like this, we need to accept each one for who we are, with our strengths and our areas of weakness.
So, Mrs. Birla, I had an interesting question in the morning from a fellow Rotarian, Mukhtar, where he asked that when Empower has launched a 24-hour helpline, is it manned by artificial intelligence, like where you have your questions answered? Or, how does it work, this 24-hour helpline?
So we have a total of 42 therapists. They're on a rota and on a roster. And 24/7, the lines are manned. Obviously, depending on, where we're going to, when we get more calls, we have more therapists at that point in time. But yes, all through the night, we've got minimum 5 therapists through the night. and attending to calls in Hindi, Marathi, and English. So no, we don't have artificial intelligence, because I do believe that the human connect is extremely important. I mean, I'm a great fan of artificial intelligence. I mean, in the sense that I believe that yes, it's gone really far ahead, but it just cannot replace the human contact. So we have clinicians, they're trained professionals, and anytime you call, be rest assured you will be your call will be answered, and they take you through your situation really nicely. Very often we have callers who are intimidated. They want to call, but they don't know what to say. So I tell them that just call, and even if you say something like, I'm feeling lost, I'm feeling scared, I'm feeling helpless, I'm irritable, the counselors on the other end will guide you through and take you through the conversation, and at the end of it you will feel much better.
Thank you, Mrs. Birla. So Zirak, as we can see, a tiny little virus has brought the entire mankind to its knees. Now, from a medical perspective, could you give us a 2020 program, strategies of how do we as laypersons deal with this situation? We may not be anxious, we may not be depressed, but we still need strategies to help us go productively through this lockdown.
So I think there's a 6-prong approach that all of us are using and living by. One is we're telling everyone in their homes and with families and with their loved ones that we have to live in the present moment. There is no point constantly worrying about the future or festering with that, because that will just, amalgamate and increase anxiety. We can't keep lamenting and looking back in the past, because that will lead to depressive thoughts or negative thoughts. So focusing and being mindful on living in the present moment, accepting it, is very, very essential. Second, I firmly believe that time management, balancing your work life, time for yourself, definitely carving away time for some form of physical activity and exercise, and looking after your health and your work-life balance, those will only happen when you create a right schedule for yourself. And you have to be a bit disciplined about it, even with regards to waking up and sleeping and eating right and eating on time. Third, I would like to talk about is connecting and communicating. It is so important at times like this to connect to loved ones, people we've not been in touch with. Some of us are separated from our parents who are old and aged. We are separated from, other family members who could be unwell and ailing. I mean, I know so many people who are going through, say, cancer or other debilitating, health conditions are, dealing with it all by themselves alone. Weddings are being called off. Funerals are being extremely limited to a number of people that can go through. And all these things lead to a deep sense of isolation and loneliness. But that one phone call, that one FaceTime, that one text or WhatsApp message can make a world of a difference to let someone know that they are thought of and they are loved and that they are cherished. Fourthly, I feel it's so important, just simple 2 aspects: eat right, sleep right. And like I started off saying, that when you feel that these aspects are being disrupted, you need to reach out. There is absolutely no harm in reaching out either to a family member, friend, or loved one. And if you feel that no, still things are not okay for you, please reach out. Like I said, whether it's the helpline, whether it's online sessions at our center, at Empower, or at the foundation, we have a great team out there who will help you and guide you and support you and give you the right strategies. And, sometimes just talking out how you feel to a stranger who's a professional, but who's not going to, judge you, is not going to have any bias with you or not have any secondary gain with you, are sometimes the best people to be able to vent with. And lastly, I believe, that's my personal thing, that when you add humor into life, I think everything gets better. I mean, I don't know how many of you have seen this movie called Beautiful Life. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie. In fact, one of my favorites, about a father and his son in a concentration camp in World War II, and how he makes those years in the concentration camp magical for his child, because he completely shields him away from the reality. I'm not saying we need to do that with our kids, but definitely as parents, we need to be cognizant of the fact that our kids' mental health is important, and shielding them from constantly watching or talking about negative news, whether it's with regards to the pandemic, whether it's with regards to unemployment or job losses or things getting more and more hopeless. We need to keep the positivity and the spirits up. And you can only do that by adding creativity, adding innovation in things that you do, whether it's cooking in the kitchen, whether it's helping out at home together, whether it's watching, shows and movies together at home. But adding creativity, adding fun, and adding humor become very, very important for families at times such as these. So these are my 6 little points.
Thank you, Zirak.
Mala, I'd just like to interject here.
Yeah.
Of everything, of course, I completely agree with everything that Zirak has said. And I think, trying to get that into one's routine is extremely important. I think of everything, everything is very, very important, but the reason why I want to lay emphasis on this particular one is because I know people generally don't believe in the benefits of it, is exercising. I cannot emphasize enough the benefits of exercise. Of course, physically, it really helps you keep fit. It helps you lose weight if you need to lose weight. Physical benefits aside, because that is something that we all know, but the mental benefits of it, the way exercise really goes towards your mental wellness and mental fitness is something that I cannot emphasize enough. So that is something that, one must take the time out. I know a lot of times when you're not already into it, you do feel lazy. You always feel that, I will start tomorrow, but that tomorrow never comes. It has to be now. The time is now. It can never, there's no other better time than now. So, and start with a short walk. If you want to start with a walk, there's lots of things available on YouTube. Whether you want to do cardio, whether you want to do Zumba, whether you want to do aerobics, whether you want to do yoga, there's just so much out there. Be experimental, experiment with different things. It's a lot of fun. Once you get addicted to it, believe you me, it is an addiction. The day you don't do it, you really feel that you've missed out on a very, very important part of life. It's like people, who are religious and who are into rituals. The day you don't do your japa, the day you don't do your prayers, the day you don't, sort of go to the temple, that there is something really missing in your life. So exercise is like that. Once you start doing it and you start reaping the benefits of it, you start getting addicted to it. And that is one very, very, very critical aspect and a very important component of keeping mentally fit. So I would really urge everybody that you must start exercising. It really makes a very, very big difference.
And Mrs. Birla, in fact, you're absolutely right. There are actual medical research shows that when you have even 10, 15 minutes of something cardio, be it even a dance, walk, jog, exercise, gym, it increases endorphins in the brain. So they say it's almost like a neuroprotection. It actually protects the brain neurophysiologically and neurochemically against anxiety and depression. And like I started off saying, that stress increases the stress hormone called cortisol. So exercise even brings down cortisol levels that bring down the symptoms of stress and anxiety. So you're absolutely right on that. It actually has a medical effect on the neurochemistry of the brain when you do exercise.
Thank you, Zirak and Mrs. Birla. Mrs. Birla, my question is to you that because of this pandemic, while we were very ill prepared for it, education and schooling has gone through a major transformation overnight. And when we locked down, we thought it would be 15 days, but now we are looking ahead and, it does look as if we are going to be having online education for the near few months to come. How are school students reacting to this, and how are teachers adapting to this change, especially because many teachers don't have help at home? So how are they adapting to this?
So what you're saying is absolutely right, Mala. When we started, we sort of just went head on into it because we were obviously very close to exams. So portions needed to be completed. The first 2 weeks, nobody knew what's going to happen, but we just went head on. And now we're still continuing with it. Our school, ABBA, will close next week. TAB is closed. TAB is actually is just going to finish with their summer vacation, and they're going to start in June. So now the teachers are, of course, gearing up for it. But there were a lot of issues lot of concerns, a lot of challenges that they faced. But I must say that, they really worked and have come up to speed and have faced and coped the challenges very well. Just to name a few, like for example, of course, connectivity was a very big issue because at times teachers themselves didn't have connectivity, students didn't have connectivity, they didn't have laptops, the students didn't have laptops at home, and teachers, sometimes the laptops were working, not working. So, for both the times we said either get your connectivity better. So they tried to do that, or sometimes teachers had to borrow, even students had to borrow, their equipment, their devices from neighbors and use it for that time. Then, of course, students being students, initially there was this whole bit where, they used to they still do it. They put their videos off and, you don't know what's happening at the back, right? So the teachers think that they're studying, but they probably are not. They're probably fooling around. There were times when they used to click photos, take screenshots, and then circulate it, odd angles of the teachers or things that they've said. So that was a very big, it became a discipline issue actually. And we took discipline action against it in the sense that, constantly emails were going from the schools out, from both the schools and to the students and to the parents to tell them that, this is something that we cannot be doing. So we had to train them also to be cognizant and be sensitive to the teachers, when they are speaking, and not fool around and not make a mockery of it. So these are the little things. Technology, if all of us, we know that, in our generation, we all grapple with technology. It just doesn't come easy to us like the way it does with the younger generation. So the teachers also face that, right, to learn how to use it. For myself, I know, I've been using Zoom and setting up meetings, but till date, if I have to do it, I'm fumbling. I don't know what to do. And I have to call my daughter in to help me. And each time it's the same story. She, of course, cannot understand that why I don't get it. And I just genuinely don't get it. So, these are things that we all grapple with, and the teachers also do it. But I think this is here to stay. So now we are, training the teachers of both the schools of how to use tools better. What are the different online tools they can use? How can they use Google Classroom better? How do they use Google Docs better? So we're just giving them the skills to equip them so that they're better geared for the situation to come for the next few months. So I think now everybody's sort of getting into the mode of it. But yes, initially there were challenges, but I mean, hats off to them. They've really coped with it well. And I think they're ready to now take it on with the whole new fervor.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Birla. And thank you, Zirak. Now I am going to leave the floor open for question answers because I see quite a few have come up on the chat. So I'm taking this question from Dr. Deepak Deshpande. Generally, it is believed that working from home is more stressful than working on site. Is this a myth or a reality? And also there is stress from a frequent use of mobile devices. So how does one reduce this? Zirak, would you like to take the question?
Yeah. So I think there's not one more than the other. I think it's how we balance it. Yes, I know many people have been stating that working from home is difficult. I think because the whole concept of working at home is odd, right? I mean, home is supposed to be a place where you relax, rest, unwind, and spend quality time with your family. But the situation is such that we have to. So I think finding the balance, that's one that is very, very important. And more important than balance is also keeping times structured. You have to have your work hours structured. You have to find maybe one space or place in your home where you work from. Even small things like having a comfortable chair, because I know many people are complaining of being on the devices all the time. The posture gets affected. You get headaches, migraines with screen time all the time. Or making sure that you're sitting on a comfortable chair which has good support for your back. So I think if you take all these little points into consideration, I think the stress factor goes down. And look at the positives, right? You cut down, I think, on so much of time traveling. I mean, all of us are always stressed in reaching on time for work. There's awful traffic at any given time. We sometimes reach back home late. I know young parents who don't get enough quality time to spend with their kids when they're in office hours. So I think it's also changing the perspective of things. Look at the silver lining of aspects of being at home. We're getting to spend more quality time with our loved ones and our kids. We're getting to take breaks, perhaps, and even have meals together. I mean, I can't remember the last time on a work day that I had lunch or breakfast with my kids, and I'm enjoying those aspects too. So I think it's a change in perspective and a change of how you look at things that can reduce the stress from working at home.
Thank you.
You know,
Yeah.
in fact, there are a lot of people whom I know are actually, you know, liking this concept of working from home pretty much for the same reasons that Zirag just mentioned. Because, you know, this whole rush of going somewhere and then getting caught in the traffic has got totally eliminated from our lives. And actually, if you think about it, I mean, when we have to get to a meeting or when we have to get somewhere, that whole rush feeling, that, you know, are you going to be on time? You're not going to be on time. It just adds so much of stress to our lives that whole bit has got eliminated. It's added a lot of flexibility in people's lives, because then you can, you know, complete your work at a time that is most convenient to you. A lot of people are also saying that they're actually working more efficiently. Their work has gone up. They've become more productive. So I think it's a mix of both. And like what Zirag is saying, I think it's the way you look at it. Let's look at the glass half full instead of half empty. And let's, you know, your perception becomes your reality. So if you perceive it in that manner, then that becomes reality for you.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Vidla. Mrs. Vidla, I have a question from Devika. Now, as a woman, she has written that many of us, we have taken up jobs very often to get away from the home front. And now, post-lockdown, it's probably going to become a norm when they have to work from home. And the people at home often consider the work they do as being very trivial. So as a woman, how does one deal with this?
Yeah, I can understand that totally, Devika, because I do understand that very often, you know, you want to get away from home and go to work, because then that becomes your safe haven. So what you're feeling is, I think, absolutely valid. That, you know, how do you deal with it? And obviously there are times when, you know, you would feel frustrated and you want to just run away and go elsewhere. So I think what I would do if I was in your place is, firstly, let's accept that, yes, it is a difficult situation, in the sense that, you know, I mean, it is frustrating to be in a situation like this and you can't get out when that was your safe haven. But again, let's take small baby steps, maybe explain. I mean, it is something that you got to constantly keep explaining to people at home who you think will understand, and try to explain to them the rationale of your work, and explain to them that how it's important that they respect what you do. And for people who really don't matter, I think it's not worth it in any case. So you may as well, let's you know, choose your battles wisely. Explain to people who you think matter, who will understand. And for people who don't matter and don't understand, in any case, it doesn't matter. So, but, you know, communicate with them and try to explain to them and make them see your point of view, that how your work is important and that they need to respect that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mrs. Bidla. Zirag, there is a question from Vrishali that we have talked about teenagers, but what has been the effect of this lockdown on children below 6 to 7 years? And especially when parents are working from home, how do they handle them? Because we've always talked about quality time, but now we are faced with the situation of quantity time also. So how do we handle this situation, the young parents?
So I've always, in fact, I've been saying this to a lot of parents, and I'm hearing it from a lot of parents actually, that the real heroes in this whole pandemic are our small kids. You know, all kids actually in that age group, that's, you know, 5, 6, and up to about 8 or 9, they are thinking that this is an extended vacation. They are actually loving this quality time at home. I mean, you know, one would think that they would resent not going out or not being able to go for birthday parties and things like that. But again, like I said, it's how you create that environment at home for your child. That is very, very important. Very. In fact, that remains the whole mainstay of how you deal with this age group. And if you make the stupidest and the smallest of things magical for them, you make surprise meals for them, you come up with innovative and creative ways to you know, help them with this online schooling, which is also very, very difficult for so many of these young kids who've never experienced this before. Another challenge is the attention spans, right? I mean, imagine a 7 or an 8-year-old sitting on a Zoom call or a virtual class, it is really tough. I mean, because there are tons of distractors. It is kind of boring because it's not like you're in a classroom with other kids and experiential learning or the humanistic approach of teaching. But as I said, we have to adapt to all these changes. I think if we as parents do it soulfully, mindfully, intelligently, and do it in a way that suits each child's needs better, you are going to achieve that balance. I know it's tough. I know moms are literally, I mean, I've seen my own wife sometimes running into the kitchen, then getting on a work call, then putting food on the table, and then going back to the online classes that our kids need to be part of. It is really, really tough. But that's why, as I said even before, that being disciplined about your routines at home for all these small little things, you have to create like a small timetable and ensure that it's followed, and use a lot of affirmation, praise, fun. Because if you're going to get flustered and irritable and snappy and reprimand your kid for the small mistakes he or she is making with the online classes, or just irritable in general, you're going to have this situation get even worse for the whole family, and especially impact the kid more negatively.
Yeah, thank you, Zirak. There is a question from Ankit. Mrs. Birla, I would like it if you could take it. Acceptability is a big issue when someone is going through mental stress. And acceptability is not only a big issue for the others in the family, it is also an issue for oneself. How do we deal with that?
Ankit, what you're saying is absolutely right. I mean, that is one major reason why the stigma around mental health concerns, and seeking help for the same is so big, because we are not able to accept it. So for yourself, I think it's very important to understand that it's not a personal failing. The minute you understand that it is a medical issue, it is physiological, there are reasons for what you're feeling. It's always a combination of nature and nurture. And it's not a personal failing. The most important thing for you to know is that just because you as in anybody, just because one has a mental health concern doesn't mean that person is weak. It's like saying, if you have diabetes, are you going to become weak? No. So the same way, if you have a mental health concern, it doesn't mean that you're mentally weak. There are reasons for it. There are medical reasons for it. And there are solutions for it. I think the fact, if you are able to accept it, that is what makes you really strong. And the fact that you're dealing with it itself means that you're very strong, because dealing with a mental health concern, and then that too in isolation, is a very tough thing. So you are already very strong to be able to deal with it. So if you take away the fact that it is a personal failing and something to be ashamed of, then you'll be able to accept it. And once you accept it, then you should obviously convince, then you have to explain it to the others. And that's where I feel that the role of the family is very important, that even all family members and all of us should understand that it is not a personal failing. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less of a productive person just because you have a mental health concern. It doesn't make you any less than anybody else. And it's pretty much like having any other physical concern, like a diabetes, or whether if you have like a fever. So let's view it in that same manner, because it is, and let's change our perspective about it. The minute we do that and acceptance comes in, you're not judgmental about it. Let's not discriminate against people who have mental health concerns. I think that's where the acceptability will come in, and we will be able to face it and seek help appropriately.
Yeah. Mrs. Birla, there is another question for you, that in the short run, we have already seen, this is from Usha. She said that in the short run, we have already seen the expanding difference between the haves and the have-nots. The IB schools have been able to adapt better, but state and municipal schools, obviously because of the lack of resources also, are closed. So she's asking that how would you suggest that Rotary and Empower can work together to reduce this gap?
So Ushaji, I think this is a wonderful idea actually. If Sunilji is open to it, we'd be very happy to help with this. Since, we've sort of run the Zoom classes, and we've trying our best. I think we're coping with it in a reasonable manner. There will always be challenges, but I think we're pretty okay. I think we're quite set. So we'd be very happy to help in that, and we can see how we can help get, we would obviously need to train the teachers, technologically and digitally, how we train them. We'll have to get them up to speed. We'll have to ensure that they have the right devices, and somehow get the children together. I mean, here the issue will be, how do we get the children together? Because the children, being in their own individual spaces, may not have the devices, but if we can get them into clusters or into groups a little later when the lockdown lifts, then this is something that we can work on and at least make some headway in this direction.
Okay, this is one last question, but because there are many more, but we'll have to draw to a close. This is asked from the employer's perspective. What are the warning signs that our remote-based employees are starting to crack under the stress of working from home? Because they need the incomes too, and how do we as employers ascertain the mental well-being of our employees? Chirag, could you take that question?
Sure. So I think it's the same symptomology that we follow. So I think a lot of people working from home, from a work perspective, I know that they're going through what we call as a burnout. And it's similar to the stress-like symptoms, right? So it's leading, definitely what starts getting affected first is your sleep cycles and eating habits. They seem to go up because, like I said, when the cortisol level goes up, it increases appetite and weight gain. There is a sense of demotivation that comes by. So I know a lot of people who are working from home are complaining of not feeling charged enough, not feeling energetic enough. In fact, they're going through a lot of fatigue and tiredness despite just being at home, which is odd, right? One would think that being at home and not really, physically being active, you would be more energetic, but actually the reverse is happening. And also a lot of stress-induced symptoms like a lack and loss of interest in almost everything. So even when there is then time off from work, people are saying that they can't get into watching TV programs or just chatting and spending quality time with family members at home, and they just don't feel like doing much. And lastly, the other symptoms that are being experienced is a lack and loss of attention spans, concentration levels, and focus. They're finding it difficult to make decisions, focus and multitask and concentrate on work given at hand, or difficulty with decision making. So all this basically again amounts to what we call as an acute anxiety and acute stress related symptoms. So again, in situations like this, important to talk about it. I know many organizations have started a mental health program. They have allotted mentors to smaller groups, like your immediate person that you report to could be like a mentor. Even in our organization, Mrs. Birla has created a list of activities from dance, yoga, gym, or talks, seminars on Zoom and it's optional. So if anyone wants to join, they can beautifully do that. Online counseling is very, very important. So ensuring that employees know that if they have a concern and they need to approach a psychologist or a therapist or a psychiatrist, they have complete access to them. So if these are mindfully and cognitively put into place, I think we safeguard our employers and our employees both.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, Mrs. Birla has organized a Bollywood night for us tonight. So, yeah, so okay. I'll have to take a couple of questions because...
I'm just going to interject here, Mala, once.
Yeah.
What I'd also like to add to this is that, I feel now everybody is having an overdose of, the professional aspect of it, and
correct.
Sort of what are the do's and don'ts during COVID, and what are the do's and don'ts, and how do you feel mentally fit, and this and that. So I feel that what we're trying to do is that actually put in activities which will take them away from it, because all of us have heard so much of it that I think now we've understood it. We need to put it into practice. So that's why we are now trying to, so whether it is dance class or whether it is cooking classes, or we've got some the teams organize some games, like tonight we have a Bollywood evening, and I've put it in one of the things to do is that they have to come dressed to the party. So I think little things like that make a difference, and I think if we can put that into practice for our teams, I think it will really help. And I think online counseling and Empower does a lot of workshops for corporates it could be shorter workshops, it could be webinars, specific, and it's of course bespoke to what your needs are. So, Empower is very happy to kind of, if any of you would like it, we're very happy to, do these workshops or webinars for your organizations.
That's great, Mrs. Birla. Thank you so much for the offer. I need to ask, there's an interesting question, Zirak. We need to take this because you've talked about addition to online games. Lata is asking, can you give specific strategies about how to de-addict the children? Like Mrs. Birla, of course, she has said that you must get the children involved in exercise, all of us too. Do you have any specific strategies for de-addiction from online games? Because it's very difficult to get the children away from them.
Yeah. So that is a struggle, yes, and there's no complete right answer here, but because there are different aspects for different age groups. Like, as I said, when you're a teenager, it's very difficult to be disciplined and, make restrictions and rules and create those boundaries. But I think the approach has to be balanced, but you need to explain to your kids. I think when you're just being an authoritative parent and you're using those kind of parenting techniques and saying, no, this is my ship, my order, these are the rules you need to follow, it never works for a younger kid or an older one. You need to explain to them like how exactly what we brought forth today in our talks with the information we provided. Kids today are thinking individuals that need explanations. So when you're putting down certain boundaries and rules and time restrictions, etc., you're explaining to them, and there's enough information out there to even let children know and parents know that there is something called as a neuronal firing also. So they have actually shown on functional MRIs that with excess audiovisual stimulation and excess gaming that sometimes can last into 8-9 hours at a stretch, the brain actually goes through similar changes like as it would when there is an epileptic fit. So imagine if it can have that kind of a neurophysiological response in the brain, how damaging it can be. So when you know that and you give these kind of explanations that are in some way medical to our kids, I think most of them comply. And if they don't, you just have to put your foot down and be very, very firm about timelines, because you cannot have a kid sitting up till 5 and 6 in the morning gaming continuously. Like I started off saying, it leads to a plethora and a snowball effect of not just physical health concerns, but mental health ones as well. And I truly believe, I mean, it may be a biased opinion, but I feel mental health sometimes, if not as, is more important than our physical health. And these messages have to be given to our kids right at the onset. You can't say, here, you take your iPhones and your iPads and do what you want. When you create boundaries, you have to set a precedent at the onset. It's like you can't give a lollipop to a kid and then say, okay, suck it 5 times and give it back to me. It's the same with devices. It's the same with gadgets. It's the same with privileges that we give our kids, that at the onset itself, you have to be very clear with boundaries and rules that you create for them.
And here, Mala, again, I'm going to interject actually. I'm going to say that, and this is something for all of us to think about actually. Everything that Zirak has said, whether it is de-addiction or whether it is getting to exercise or getting into a routine, leading a disciplined life with some structure to it, how much of that are we as parents doing? Are we following that? Because if we do it, then your children or grandchildren, children will pick it up. Because so as parents, we are the best teachers. So if there is something that if you want your children to inculcate certain habits, you have to do it first. Once you start doing it, the children will automatically follow it. And that is something that we have to always be cognizant of, because, very often we say one thing, but we do another thing. So the child is going to pick up and follow what he sees and not what he hears. So if you want the child to get into a routine, if you want the child to not be so much on the phone, say on the dining table, then you have to put your phone down first. If you want your child to be exercising, exercise with him or her. That's the best way to inculcate the habit into the kids. If the kids see you do something, then they're going to be following it. If you're going to be doing one thing, saying one thing and doing another thing, be rest assured that it's not going to happen. And I think it's the same thing for something like respect. If you want your children to respect you, you have to respect them first. If you respect them and teach them to respect and teach them that that's the way you have to be, they're going to do that in return with you as well.
I completely agree with that, Mr. Birla. In
Yeah.
fact, just 2 days back, I was telling my daughter to get off her iPad. And I was saying that whilst I was looking into my own phone. And you should have just seen the look on her face. She was like, her two hands came up and she said, Dada, you're doing the same thing. And
That's true.
so, and I truly believe that, as parents, we need to be the voice in their heads. And that's the whole focus of role modeling, which was beautifully brought out by Mrs. Birla. But genuinely, that inner voice in their heads is ours. So we have to be really mindful how we bring them up.
So thank you very much. We are now getting close to the end of our wonderful time together. Mrs. Birla, if there is one thing, just one takeaway message you would like the audience to take away from this session, what would it be?
So I think, given the times that we are in just now, which are very challenging, like we've discussed, disruptive, uncertain, I think I'd like to say two things. One, that it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay not to seek help. So I would say that if you are not feeling up to it, if you feel you're not feeling well, if you're low, there are days when you're a little bit more anxious or you're a little paranoid, don't hesitate to seek help. When I mean seek help, either reach out to somebody close to you, but if you feel that there's nobody in your environment whom you could freely speak to, then reach out to a professional. There is a helpline you can call up. There is online services available at Empower. Just feel free to make that call. It doesn't make you any less strong or anything of that kind. Don't hesitate. Seek help. It'll really help you. And the other thing that I would like to say is that let's not look for perfection, because I truly believe that perfection is a flawed concept. There is nothing as perfect. There is no perfect situation. Let's make the best of what we have. Let's look at the glass half full, and let's learn to admire and appreciate the beauty in imperfection. So I think these are the two messages that I would like to leave you all with, and something for you all to ponder about.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Birla. And Zirak, what is your what takeaway would you give the audience today?
So I believe that this is a special time for us. And I think, we don't get time for ourselves. And when I'm talking about ourselves, even for self-growth. So when you have those few moments of time, I truly believe that one needs to introspect and reflect. Because if you're going to point 10 fingers in 10 different directions and blame all the negativities and aspects externally, you're not doing any inward work. And that inner journey of introspection and reflection is so important to just grow as an individual and as a human being. And only then can that shift your perception to things like we discussed, and focus on gratitude. We sometimes take so many of the smallest of things in life for granted, and we should stop doing that. We need to have gratitude for, like I said, small things that we take for granted in life. And if we think of those at a conscious level, even 5 or 10 of them on a daily basis, we have so much to be grateful for. And lastly, just enjoy this quality time with loved ones. These times may never come back again, hopefully not, but make the best of it. And it's amazing the kind of quality time that you can have with your kids and families back home.
Yeah, thank you so much, Zirak. And let me tell you what has given the Rotarian families hope today. It is the passion, expertise, and commitment to the cause of mental health, and your generosity, both Mrs. Birla and Zirak, that you have made time for us today. Now, usually, one would turn to the audience and say, I would like you to join me in a round of applause. I don't know what one can do in a webinar to get this acknowledgement, but to all of you, spread far and wide, at least let us join our minds together in thanking our wonderful and knowledgeable and so empathetic presenters. And to my Rotary family, if you would like to have more such webinars, it may not just be medical issues, it may be larger social, emotional, and other issues which are a ramification of the pandemic. I'd like to again reiterate that Rotary District 3141 has partnered with Empower to overcome the barriers associated with mental health. And Mrs. Birla has already given a commitment that she'd be very happy to organize many such webinars So thank you once again, Mrs. Birla and Dr. Marker, for joining us today. Sunil, would you like to please close off the meeting today?
Yes, I would. Personally, thank you, Mrs. Birla and Dr. I think one of the most amazing sessions that I've been through, quietly listening. Dr. Zakir, just a little point of suggestion to you. Next time when your kid asks you for that mobile, just give it to him and you don't put it off. So we'd like to actually, just a suggestion, the next kind of a seminar we can do, actually take up a special topic like how to handle kids per se, or then how to handle business per se. You could take up different verticals and construct the entire seminar around that. The way I'm reading the messages on the chat, I think most of them just have been awed with this kind of seminar, and we look forward to much, much more. Mala, Empower is your baby now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Birla, for encouraging us and supporting me throughout in this venture. Sometimes I forget whether I'm a part of Empower or I'm a part of Rotary. So I have to divide myself equally with both of you. But thank you so much, Zirak, Mrs. Birla. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mala. You're always a part of Empower. Please don't forget that. You're always a part of Empower first, of Abbott first, Rotary second. Even to Sunil ji, I think that's amply, I'm going to be a little possessive of Mala here, and we'll have her first. So, but no, thank you so much. It's been a really wonderful session. I've really enjoyed myself. I always enjoy the time I spend with Rotarians, and I've really enjoyed it. Thank you all so much. Really looking forward to a long association.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Birla, for always giving us these awesome platforms. It's
Thank
just
you.
amazing to do these things with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I have unmuted everyone. If anybody wants to give a big round of applause, please feel free.
Hi Mala, it was really wonderful.